What's up, YouTube family? And on today's episode of Keeping It Real Politics, we're going to talk about what is the takeaway from the nationwide protest in the wake of the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it's my humble belief that that good things can come out of a bad situation. Police brutality is an issue that has been going on for quite some time in this country, and the challenge is in the wake of the George Floyd murder, there seems to be on in the minds of some, it seems to be only a racial issue. I think that we can come up with some good reforms that can make the situation a lot better for everybody across the country. And in the wake of this George Floyd situation, what we're seeing is that there has been an accountability that the police have not had to live up until this point. Because what we have to understand is that the police are public servants. They are the enforcement mechanism of the government. So they are the only ones who have the monopoly on the use of force. And so with that power comes great responsibility. And if they're not going to be held accountable accordingly, then we just need to strip away the power from the police. And of course, we don't need that. We do need to have a mechanism whereby people are held accountable for their actions. We're talking about the citizens. But if we're going to, basically deputize and give police use of force has to be justified. And in the case of the George Floyd situation, it was definitely excessive force. There is nobody in this world that can make the argument that it was not unjust. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be the Monday morning quarterbacks and the armchair quarterbacks that want to say, well, we don't know what happened before the video started filming. Well, here's the thing. Let's assume the worst case scenario. Let's assume that George Floyd was being belligerent with the cops. Let's assume he was trying to fight the cops. Let's assume all of the worst things that could possibly happen, that could have happened. But once he's been detained, once he's been handcuffed with his hands tied behind his back, face first on the ground, what threat does he then pose at that point? Furthermore, there were 3 police officers that were leaning on him. 2 were on the bottom half of his body, and the third, which is the most egregious police officer, had his knee on his neck for approximately 8 minutes, which basically was the determining factor in his death. Now, again, there's always going to be the contrarians that say, well, the autopsy said that he had pre-existing conditions. But of course, because we're talking about government basically is there to protect itself oftentimes. It is not about justice. And therein lies the problem with the takeaway that we need to have from this George Floyd situation. Everybody needs to be held accountable. There needs to be independent investigation panels that are able to overlook situations like this. Because at the end of the day, who polices the police? When the police are up to no good, when the police do wrong, who puts them in check? Because had it not been for the video footage of this incident, nobody would have ever known about it. The official police story, as they concocted it, would make it seem like George Floyd was being belligerent. He was fighting the police officers. They had to detain him. The police officer had his knee on his neck, and the man succumbed to natural causes. He basically succumbed because he had pre-existing conditions, and that caused his death. And so without the video footage, we never would have known any different. But because of video footage, we now know that the police were lying. And the police have lied many times. And so when we're told that there are good police officers and bad police officers, there has to be a line drawn in the sand whereby we say the good police officers need to basically give up the goods. The bad police officers need to go. And the only way that can happen is when the good police officers turn in the ones who are bad. We purge all of the police departments across the country with the bad police officers, and then we pay the good ones more money. Once we pay them more money, it becomes a more noble profession, and we can hire the best of the best and make sure that we hold them properly accountable. So that'll wrap it up for this week's episode of Keeping It Real Politics. Please, if you could, do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep it real.